The Bride Who Waits. Chapter 25. With the 5th year of her engagement, and Isabel still away with Tomas, Mira was about to leave to make a tour of Beth and Tesh when she heard someone call her name. Turning to her helper, she was told, "You have a visitor." Her eyes widened as she watched her mother walk into the room. She looked thinner than the last time she'd seen her, but still wore the same disapproving frown she always had when she caught sight of her daughter and the simple surroundings she occupied. "I would think the fiancé of the prince would keep better quarters," she eyed one of Mira's fellow workers as she added, "and better company." "Mother, you're here." She embraced the woman as she inquired, "Have you been getting the letters I've sent you?" "I have." "Is everything all right back on the farm?" The woman looked about ready to cry, then steeled her face as she replied coldly, "They took it." "Who took it?" She carried her mother over to a chair, where she could sit down as her legs started to give out. "The landowners. They took it back. I tried to pay them with the money I got from selling your dresses, but they didn't want it. I tried, Mira." There were tears in the woman's eyes as she said, "I tried to work the land, but I'm not a workhorse like you. I've lost my home." Mira hugged her mother as the woman began to cry. "No, Mother, you haven't. When Joshua comes, he'll give us all a new home. This place isn't our real home. Our home is with our prince." The older woman touched her daughter's face as she asked expectantly, "Is he really coming, Mira? Is Shiloh really as great as you say?" "Even better, and when he comes to take us home, he'll take back Beth and Tesh and make it as lovely as Shiloh is. When that happens, we won't have anything to cry about anymore. It's going to be a joyous day." Her mother looked sad as she said, "I wish I could believe that." "You can. Please, travel with me. I'm going to tell people about Joshua and his love for them. If you come with me, you can hear the message too, and see the transformation this love brings to people's lives. It's that change that witnesses of the truth of his words. Will you come?" The woman looked tired, but finally agreed. "I have nowhere else to go." She smiled as she hugged her mother close. "You won't regret it." With Simeon traveling with them for protection, Mira and her mother separated from the larger group to do work in smaller towns, out of the way from the larger cities. Though Mira had assured her friends she would be fine with only her mother, they were worried about the fact that Jared had started to arrest those who were speaking well of Prince Mikhail. Insisting that she would be a prime target for Jared, who would want to hurt the prince's future bride in order to hurt him, they made her bring the extra companion. Up in the mountains of Middle Beth and Tesh, they found a small group of people of whom the truth about the king and his son had not been spoken. Once they received the letters from the prince, the people were ready to hear more, and offered the 3 travelers a cabin to spend the night in, so they could stay to talk longer. The cabin was nice and cozy, with a small fire keeping the whole of the room warm. With only 2 beds in the cabin, Mira was forced to share a bed with her mother again, who was just as much a kicker as ever. "We haven't had that much time to talk outside of work," mused her mother, as she talked across the room to Simeon. "What was your childhood like?" "I grew up on a farm," replied Simeon. "It's not that big, and my family didn't own it, but it was our home." "Oh," replied her mother more interestedly than Mira thought warranted. "Mira grew up on a tenement farm, too. What kind of crops did you grow?" As the man replied, her mother elbowed her daughter as she said, "He's a handsome one, and he knows how to work the land." "Mother, please, I am engaged to Joshua." The woman let out a breath of air that sounded doubtful. "I know you believe that, but do you really want to be a queen? You're a simple girl, better suited to be a farmer's wife than the ruler of a country. There's no way you could handle all the intrigues of court life." "There's not any intrigue in Joshua's court. Everyone loves him there." "Obviously not, or Prince Jared never would have rebelled." "That was an isolated case, and after Joshua comes and takes us home, nothing like that will ever happen again." "How can you be sure?" "Because he has promised it, and I believe everything he says." Her mother looked like she wanted to argue, but Mira turned her attention away from the woman, as she tuned into Simeon, who had not noticed the women were not even listening to him. "I love farming, but I'd really love to plant something that I wouldn't eat." Hearing this, Mira asked, "Like what?" "I've always liked roses. I'd love to make my own species of them." At the mention of breeding plants, she told him about Joshua and the grove of grapes. "They were the most beautiful shade of purple and tasted as sweet as honey. I can't wait until we return to Shiloh so you can try some." He smiled. "I can't wait either." She felt something sharp hit her back and turned to see her mother wiggling her eyebrows at her. "No. Good night, Mother." She turned back and quickly fell off to sleep. The next morning, Mira helped Simeon dig them out of the snow-covered cabin as they headed out to meet with the villagers, who again listened eagerly to their words. In the afternoon they said their goodbyes as Mira left them with some letters from the prince, then headed on to the next mountain village. "Why couldn't we have stayed longer?" asked her mother as they headed away from the village. "Since we don't really know when Joshua's coming, I feel it's important we are constantly moving," replied Mira. "I don't want anyone to miss out on hearing the message that he is coming, the message about the better life he promises for them." Her mother looked thoughtful for a moment, then asked, "But what if he never comes? What if he takes years and you've wasted your youth waiting on him?" "It doesn't matter. Even if I have to wait 100 years, I will not grow weary. He is worth waiting for. I hope you will realize that someday." They traveled like this for several months, spreading the truth as they went. At the base of the other side of the mountain range, they stopped in another village, where they were asked to stay to talk more. That night, she woke to the sound of a child crying. Hurrying into the room, she found Simeon comforting the boy of the family who had let them use their home. The boy looked scared as he told Simeon he had been dreaming of Jared coming into their house and taking them away. "It's all right," consoled the man. "Jared doesn't even know where we are, and even if he did, I don't think he would harm us. What good would it do to hurt us when we are just a small number?" Looking past him, the boy told Mira, "In the dream I saw Jared stab you through." Coming over to sit beside Simeon, she patted the young boy's head as she told him, "Jared knows he would cause Joshua more pain by keeping me alive and in his clutches than by killing me." "How can you be so sure?" inquired the boy. "I'm not, but it doesn't matter to me even if I do die." "Why would you say that? Don't you want to see Prince Mikhail again?" "I do, but more than that, I want him to be united with his people. And if I have to die in order to help bring that reunion about, then I will gladly lay down my life." The look in the boy's eyes told her he did not understand, but she could not really explain it herself. Her love for Joshua just made her care more about his well-being and the well-being of those he cared for over her own. Assuring the boy again that they would be fine, she and Simeon left him to get some sleep. "You really aren't that great with kids," joked the man as he closed the door. "What do you mean? If a kid's upset by a nightmare, you don't tell them it is okay if you die." She winced as she realized it probably hadn't been the best image to put into his head. "You're right. I should have just told him Joshua would never let Jer hurt me." "Do you believe that?" She nodded. "I do." As the two parted ways, Mira found her mother standing in the doorway of their shared room, giving her a strange look. "What?" "It's probably best you don't pursue Simeon. A man like him would expect you to sire him handsome, strapping boys like himself. And we both know how well that would go over." Mira ignored her mother as she pushed past into the room. Crawling into the bed, she could feel her mother's eyes still watching her as the woman said, "If you had become a mother, I wonder how it would have changed you. Would you have become more feminine? Or would you have been like the Gold's daughter?" Mira frowned as she thought about the woman who had gone insane after her pregnancy, and she could not bear to think about it. "I guess we'll never know," mused her mother as she slid in beside her daughter. Turning away from the woman, Mira tried to put the thoughts out of her head that had been placed there. Falling asleep, she dreamed of reuniting with Joshua, and the anguish she would bring him with their union. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Chapter 26. In the morning they again spoke to the people, staying with them several days before they headed off to the next town. It was while they were traveling down an especially steep rock face that Mira felt the pin on her chest snap, as she watched with anguish as the precious brooch fell away into a crack within the rock. Though she tried to reach after it, the hole was too deep, and she finally gave up. "Should we see if we can't break away the rock and go in after it?" inquired Simeon. She shook her head in bitter anguish. "No. It was just a nice reminder, but I do not need it. I still have my memories." Though she said this with assurance, inside she was slightly worried at the loss of the gift. It had been so long since she had seen Joshua, she had started to forget what his voice sounded like. Then there was the worry that as so much time had passed, she might not be able to recognize him when he finally did come. And after all her time traveling the country with all its different hardships, would he recognize her? Though these worries often came to her, she always pushed them away. It was best not to dwell on the what-ifs. They only led to more doubt, and she could not bear the thought of ever doubting Joshua. At the base of the mountain they met up with some familiar faces. "Mira!" cried the women as they embraced her. She smiled as she greeted her former companions. "Rachel, Elizabeth, it is so great to see you. What are you doing all the way out here?" "I suspect doing the same thing you are," replied Rachel. "Spreading the word about the prince's soon coming," added Elizabeth, "and the truth about who he is." Behind them, she heard someone clear their throat and looked back to see her mother giving her a look like, "Well, aren't you going to introduce us?" "Oh, right. This is my mother and our traveling companion, Simeon." Elizabeth looked abashed as the man smiled at her and took her hand in greeting. After they made their introductions, the girls invited them to an inn where they bought a meal. "Tell me," started Mira, "what have you been up to since we left the castle?" "When I first got home, I didn't really do anything," replied Rachel. "I just went back to life as usual. But as I sat around doing nothing, I remembered all the servants at Shiloh and how happy they all looked to serve others. I remembered the prince, when I thought he was just a stable boy, and how eager he was to help everyone no matter the task. It made me feel guilty. That's when Elizabeth came for a visit." The other woman picked up the story as she said, "I had returned home without any thought for doing anything differently. But as I went about my regular routine, people started to make comments about how different I was. I hadn't noticed a change, but when my friends would start to gossip about different things, I'd direct the conversation to other things. I found myself not enjoying the activities I had before. I even felt guilty the times I gave in and talked bad about someone. Every time I did it, I thought about the residents of Shiloh and how none of them had ever said any kind words about anyone. And I thought of Prince Mikhail and the love he has for everyone, and how to hear me say unkind things about the ones he cares for would hurt him. I didn't know what to make of these new feelings, so I went to visit Rachel. We'd become friends during our time at the castle, so I was glad for her visit. After we discussed it, we decided we could not go on living our former lives. We had changed, and the things we enjoyed before were just not bringing us joy anymore. Things were different now, and we realized we didn't want them to go back to the way they were. But we didn't know how to stay and grow in this new life. That's when we got a letter from the prince." Mira felt her heart flutter at the thought as she said, "You got a personal letter from the prince?" The women shook their head. "Not a personal one, but it was filled with his love, and as we read it we realized what we needed to do. People around us were saying cruel things about him, and it hurt us to think there were people out there who did not know the truth about his love. That's when we decided it was time to go out there and actually start doing some good, start thinking of other people. And that's how we got here," finished Elizabeth. Mira was about to tell her story when her mother yawned widely. "That was a lovely story, but I don't understand. If neither of you were chosen by the prince, what do you care about his coming or not?" "The prince is coming to take everyone, not just his bride," replied Mira. "But why would he care about some dusty, poor residents of some backwater country? To him we're not just some worthless castaways. He loves us, every one of us. And he's coming to take all who will go with him home to the wonderful place he has prepared for us. That's why he originally came to Bethlehem, to get back the deed. Not because he wants to increase his territory, but because he wants to free us from this sad existence we are living in." "I can see why you'd want to leave it," replied her mother, as she then turned to Rachel and Elizabeth. "But I can tell you two are ladies of class. Why would you give up the comfortable life you have?" "Because we weren't happy with it anymore," replied Rachel. "We'd finally experienced true happiness with the prince in Shiloh. The happiness we had before was only a shallow, selfish kind. But with him, we found true and pure joy. A life with him is worth far more than all the jewels in Bethlehem." By the time they finished their meal, the sun had already set hours before. Checking into the inn, the group of 5 decided to travel together for a time until their paths diverged. In the morning, they continued on their way, as the 3 women spent most of the journey talking of Joshua and Shiloh and all the things they hoped to do on their return. "I didn't get a chance to get to the center of the hedge maze," stated Mira. "I hope to see it with Joshua when we go home." "I'm going to learn to cook," stated Rachel. "I want to be useful this time around, instead of just lazing around all day. There was this girl there who had the most beautiful voice. I would only hear her in the mornings before we woke up. She sang the most beautiful songs about her love for the king and his son. I want to find her and see if she will teach me how to write my own melodies of praise for them." When the women weren't talking of the prince with each other, they shared their devotion to passing travelers. Not all appreciated the topic, but some listened intently, either because they had nothing better to do, or because they were genuinely interested. "Those two have become awfully close. mused Mira's mother to her on their third day of traveling with the other women. Who? Her mother motioned to the side where Elizabeth and Simeon were cooking the group a meal. Looking back to her mother, she replied questioningly, Why do you say that? Not all women are as blind as you, Mira, to Simeon's good looks and charm. I am engaged. Her mother rolled her eyes. Yes, we know. But that doesn't mean you can't appreciate another man's form. I care only for Joshua. Why would I bother looking at other men? Her mother waved her hand at her dismissively. Anyway, it seems you've lost your chance with him. He's moved his affections to that poor rich girl. I guess it doesn't matter. I'm surprised you even noticed Joshua with your unobservant manner. You know that Caleb's boy had a crush on you. He was 17. But his father had land. A call to eat saved Mira from her mother as they joined the rest of the group. After dinner, they traveled a little further, then made camp for the night at a roadside inn. The man was a supporter of Prince Mikhail and offered them the rooms for free, which after much insistence, they finally agreed. I guess your prince has finally done something good for us, stated her mother as they readied for bed. In the middle of the night, Mira was awakened by a kicking fit from her mother. Knowing it could be hours before her mother calmed down, she got up to take in some night air. Outside, she took a seat under a tree, from which she could see the stars. They weren't as bright as in Shiloh, but looking at them reminded her of the woods there and the sparkle in Joshua's eye. As she sat in the cover of the tree, she did not realize she was not alone until Elizabeth and Simeon were nearly right on top of her. She was about to greet them when she heard their voices, which were lowered in impassioned whispers. We've only traveled together for a few days, Simeon. I can't run away with you. The prince didn't even choose you. I can make you happy. I am happy, and you will be too when he comes. The man let out a heavy sigh. It's been 5 years since you left the castle, and he still hasn't come. What makes you think he's ever going to come? I have faith. He promised he would come, and he always keeps his promises. Simeon's laugh sounded derisive as he said, And what promise has he kept for you? He promised Mira he would marry her, but look how that's gone. He will marry her when he comes. How can he do that when he's already married another? That's just a rumor. Prince Mikhail is engaged to Mira. He would not marry another. How can you women be so devoted to him? What exactly did this prince do to make you so dedicated to him? Sensing that Elizabeth needed help, Mira rose, surprising both of them by her nearness as she said, He accepted us for who we were, flaws and all. And then through his love, he made us want to be better people. People who are actually happy for the first time in their lives. Simeon looked doubtful, and the fact made her sad, as she realized he had not as of yet accepted the prince's love. Simeon, please, listen to us, pleaded Mira. Just read the prince's letters again. Open your heart and you will see that what we say is true. He does love us, all of us, and he wants everyone to have a better life with him. He will come, and he will bring that better life to all who will accept it. If you let his words into your heart, you will be able to see that as you see the change his love brings about in your life. You will be a happier person, even before entering the new land. Simeon. The man turned to Elizabeth as she spoke his name. I can tell you want a better life than the one you have. You want something better, but we're not going to find it in Beth Natasha in its current state. But if you hold on, you will see that things are going to be far better than anything you could have ever imagined. But that goodness will only come for those who accept the prince's love and desire to accept the new life he offers. The man looked torn for a moment between what they were telling him and what he'd believed to be true for so long. In the end, he looked sad as he turned away. I'm sorry. I just can't see the things the way you do. But you will be so much more blessed than us because you believed in the prince without ever having seen Shiloh or spoken face to face with him. I know it's hard, but it's possible to still see him without standing in front of him, to hear the love in his voice without having heard his voice. You can see the changes that have occurred in people's lives by their acceptance of the message. And I know you've seen the changes in your own life. Keep a hold of that. Even those who haven't seen the prince are representatives of what a person can become when experiencing a first-hand life with him. But you too can show that new life in him. She reached into her pocket where she kept copies of the prince's letters. She held them out to him as she said, Please, read them again. Don't give up. He stared at the papers for a moment, then pushed them back to her. I'm sorry. Maybe when he comes and I actually get to see him for myself, I'll believe. But as it is now, I can't. Elizabeth grabbed his arm as he started to go. If you wait, you might never accept him. Please stay with us. I know if you continue to travel with us, your heart will be touched and you will see him. But if you go, you might never get the chance. Stay." He unclasped her hands from around his arm as he shook his head. "I'm sorry." The two watched, their hearts breaking, as the man left without looking back. Once they could see him no longer, Elizabeth broke down, as Mira hurried to her side, holding her close as the woman wept. "I'm sorry," sobbed Elizabeth. "I shouldn't be so emotional, but it just pains me to see him go." Mira felt her own heart ache, as she thought over all the lives that would choose a similar path, a path that would keep them from knowing the true joy that came with experiencing the love of their prince. Together they cried over these souls that would be lost, never knowing the true joy that came from knowing the prince and the love he had for them. Chapter 27. 6 years had passed since she had taken the cup from Joshua and accepted his betrothal. 6 years since she had last seen his face, or been graced with his smile and sparkling eyes. When she first heard the reports that Joshua had finally come to take those wanting to go with him home, she could hardly believe it. The time had finally come. Her heart was filled with joy and her eyes with tears of gratitude, as she and her mother hurried to the town where they'd heard he'd arrived. On seeing the man, who she first met by falling into his arms, her first feeling was joy. Then as he turned to look over the crowd who had gathered to see him and she saw his face, her next emotion was confusion, and then worry. She did not recognize him at all. Had time really changed him that much? Then as she studied the man closer, she realized she did recognize him, but it was not Joshua sitting atop the horse. Jer. The man was going about impersonating the prince, and by his side was Lois, acting as his bride. Though she wore the kind smile she had in the castle, Mira saw bitter anger and harshness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She may have been as beautiful as before, maybe even more so, but she was rotten to the core. Looking back to Jer, Mira frowned. The audacity the man had in pretending to be Joshua. The whole idea infuriated her as she stepped toward the man. "How dare you? After all you've done, you stoop to this? Does your evil have no limits?" "I don't know what you're talking about," stated Jer. His impersonation of Joshua's tones incredible. But no matter how hard he tried, or how well he acted at being the prince, he would never capture the look in his eyes, the gentleness in his heart, because as she well knew, there was not an ounce of love in Jer's being. Through her journeys around Beth Natash, she had seen the full extent of the man's cruel reign, and it sickened her. Turning to the crowd, Mira declared to them, "This man is an impostor. He is not the prince who you have heard about." "How do you know?" asked a man. "Because I have seen him," answered Mira, "and I know firsthand that this is not him." "And how is it you know him so well?" asked another person. "I am Mira, the prince's betrothed." The crowd laughed. "As if the prince would choose someone as plain as you." Pointing up to Lois, who looked as radiant as ever, they said, "This is the prince's bride, her ladyship Lois." "This woman is obviously insane," said Lois in pitiable tones. "I feel so sorry for the woman who raised her." Though before she would have turned on the woman and ordered her to take back the words, now Mira only replied with a look of anguish for the woman. "I do not understand how someone who spent time with the real prince could turn away from him like this. How can you join in on the lie that this man is trying to perpetuate?" Turning to the people again, she said, "Trust me, when the prince really comes, he will not come with only a few men. He will come with the whole of his kingdom to take all of his people home. But this man does not have that kind of retinue to bring with him, because he is not truly a prince. He is only a usurper and liar." The crowd was angered by her words, and her mother had to hurry her away before they had a chance to act out their anger. Outside of town, they took refuge in a run-down cottage, where Mira sat in a chair and stared at the floor. "I don't understand how this could have happened. I thought Joshua's letters about how we would know his coming was very clear. But those people actually believe Jer is the prince." Turning to her mom, she asked, "And what does Jer have to gain by playing at this farce?" "I don't know. Who can really understand the workings of an evil man?" Jer's move only invigorated her more to the work of readying people for Joshua's coming. "The people must know the truth. I will not give up. I will not stop. Not until the day he does come." With their purpose reinvigorated, Mira and her mother started on their journey again. In the towns they had already visited, she reinforced the message of how Joshua would actually come and encouraged the believers. For those that had been fooled into thinking Jair was the prince, they showed them in Joshua's personal letters how he would come and how Jair was a false prince and would not be taking them anywhere except further down the path of destruction. But those who believed Jair were the most stubborn and were most set in their belief that he was the true prince. At one such town, the crowd beat Mira before throwing her and her mother out of the city. In a shack in the woods, they took refuge as her mother treated her wounds.
Maybe we should just take a break for a while. Let things cool off.
Mira winced as the medicine stung her cut lip, then replied with surety, "We can't stop. Jair's obviously scared and knows that Joshua's going to be coming soon. He's trying to trick as many people as he can, confusing them before Joshua actually comes so they won't be ready. I won't let anyone be lost because they did not know the truth. We must press on."
I hate to say it, but your precious prince is a fool.
Please, Mother, don't say things like that.
Well, he is. To leave you to such degrading work and to allow you to be chased from town to town with no care for your well-being or life.
I am fine. The prince has provided me with all I need. Her mother scoffed as she replied,
You mean those dresses? Those things barely sold for a copper coin. Shows how much your precious Prince Jeremiah thinks of you, giving you such cheap wardrobe.
She stared at the woman in confusion as she asked, What do you mean? I thought you bought the dresses.
Don't be an idiot. I could barely afford the 2 I got you. If you had bothered to check the bag, you would have seen a note from your prince.
Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out the note which she had been keeping all this time. Taking it, Mira read it over. Though not as radiant as you, I hope you'll find them acceptable. Joshua was the one keeping me clothed? Her mother let out a frustrated sigh.
I blame your father for your being so stupid. All that work in the sun fried your brain. Of course it was the prince. But as I said, those dresses he gave you cost next to nothing. I bet he provided all the girls at the palace with wardrobe, and yours was probably the cheapest. You really are a simple girl to think someone like him would actually condescend to care for you.
Realizing what her mother was saying, she admonished her. The prince does care for me, and he cares for you too. I don't care if the dresses didn't cost a lot. I wouldn't want him to waste money on something like that, when he could use it to feed and clothe the poor.
But we are poor,
stated her mother, as she motioned to their surroundings.
We've always been poor. Why can't we ever catch a break?
But we have. The prince has promised us a new life with him and... Her mother cut her off as she slapped her across the face.
Shut up! I'm tired of hearing about your stupid prince and his unfounded promises. He is not coming, Mira. Wake up. You ruined your chances with Prince Jair. You squandered the life you could have had with Simeon, and you've wasted everyone's time by going on about this fairy tale. Princes don't come for farmers' daughters, and even if they did, you'd still never make the cut.
Mira felt her eyes sting with tears, but not because of the words her mother was saying, but because she knew they only reflected her rejection of Prince Mikhail. Mother, I know times have been tough. I know things are still rough. But when Joshua comes, all of this will become just a distant memory in the joy we will experience in the new life. There was a coldness in her mother's eyes she'd never seen before, and it chilled her to see it.
I should have drowned you.
You don't mean that.
I should have left you in the woods to die. It would have caused me less trouble than allowing you to live.
Her heart felt like it was being ripped out as she saw the hatred grow inside her mother.
I should have known you'd fail, continued her mother. From the moment you were born, you've been nothing but a disappointment. I told Prince Jair not to bother letting you go to Shiloh, but when he told me what your reward could be if you succeeded in killing the prince, I had to take the chance that you wouldn't fail me again. But what did you do? You fell in love with the man.
Her mother looked beside herself with disbelief as she said,
And then you go around spreading your crazy ideas about who Prince Mikhail really is to all the plebeians of this forsaken land.
The woman turned on her as she said,
Do you know Prince Jair has a bounty out on your head? It's not as high a reward as what he would have given to us if you'd done your job, but a person can live off of it.
Jair is a liar and a cheat. He is not the rightful owner of this land. That is why he doesn't want me talking, because he doesn't want people to know the truth. Please, listen. What Joshua promises is so much better than what Jared could ever give you. Don't listen to that false prince's lies. Don't make the mistake of choosing the wrong side."
"Oh, I won't."
With words as cold as winter, her mother reached into her bodice, from which she pulled a dagger the length of her palm. As the blade glinted in the light, Mira recognized it as looking like the dagger Jared had offered to her all those years ago to use to kill Joshua. Rising from her seat, she stepped back as her mother moved towards her. "What are you doing with that?"
"Prince Jared wanted you alive, but I think he'll see the wisdom in getting you out of his hair permanently."
Realizing what her mother was getting ready to do, she rushed past her, feeling the cold metal slice across her back before she exited into the cold night air. Though her mother was older and not as athletic as she, Mira found her movements limited by the injuries she sustained from the crowd's beating as she limped away from her maternal attacker.
"For once in your life, Mira, think of what's best for your mother. Think of how much pain you have caused me over the years, and finally do something to make up for it."
Taking cover behind a tree, she called back to the woman who had given her birth. I'm sorry I've disappointed you, but I can't let you kill me. I still have so much to do, and to allow you to stain your hands with my blood would not be to your benefit. In the end, you would regret it." She heard the knife embed itself in the wood above her head as her mother brought the blade around the tree trunk in order to end her life. Realizing if she had been standing, the knife would have killed her, she stumbled back from the woman, whom she'd once called Mother, as the woman tried to free the blade from the tree. Though wounded physically, her heart was in the most pain as she turned and hurried away. As her mother called out to her to stop, to come back, to do something right for once in her life, she continued to run. While her mother screamed after her, Mira ducked through a line of bushes, coming out into a stream, where she slipped on a rock and fell back, knocking the wind out of her even as the sound of her mother's running feet grew closer.
"I will find you, and the longer you make me search, the worse it will be for you."
Pulling herself up, she continued to run, even as her lungs started to ache and her foot throbbed, making her stumble, worsening her injuries as she banged her body against nearby trees and collapsed over upturned roots. Even as the sounds of her mother's calling grew fainter, she continued to run. Not until she hadn't heard her voice for over an hour did she finally stop to look for a place to rest. In the hollow of an old tree, she curled up, using the branches of a nearby bush as cover to keep any searching eyes from seeing her. Next thing she knew, she had passed out with the sounds of the night calling out around her.